In 1975, Dungeons & Dragons was barely a year old, but its most dedicated players had already mastered the system. High-level characters could slaughter standard monsters and shatter wooden doors without breaking a sweat. These early adopters weren't acting out theatrical narratives. They were wargamers. They brought cold mathematical precision to the table, calculating strike probabilities and maximizing their damage output on every single turn. By reaching the upper tiers of the game, their characters evolved into functional demigods. They absorbed lethal physical blows without flinching and cast spells that bent the rules of reality. This intense optimization drained the tension from the experience. When players could guarantee a victory against a dragon before the fight even started, the standard routine of dungeon exploration became entirely predictable. Optimization had effectively broken the game's sense of risk. The very mechanics meant to facilitate adventure had instead created a mathematical loop that rendered the high-level hero practically invincible. Dungeons & Dragons co-creator Gary Gygax witnessed this in his own home games. His primary playtesters, running iconic characters like Robilar and Tensor, were walking through his campaigns completely unfazed by danger. Gygax believed that a tabletop game should challenge the person sitting at the table. If a player made a foolish decision, a high strength score shouldn't rescue them. The puzzle had to target the human intellect, bypassing the numbers on the paper. His response was to write a highly specific adversarial module. He wanted to build an environment that would punish overconfident play and remind veteran adventurers that their survival was never guaranteed. He created the Tomb of Horrors. He discarded the standard ecosystem of roaming fantasy creatures and instead designed a static, malicious machine deliberately engineered to murder those who entered. The module acted as a harsh corrective tool. It forced players to abandon their aggressive tactics and rely entirely on extreme caution, complex spatial reasoning, and deep paranoia. To strip players of their power, Gygax leaned heavily on a mechanic known as save or die. In tabletop games, a saving throw is a dice roll that gives a character a chance to avoid a negative effect. But in the Tomb, many traps offered no roll at all. If you made the wrong choice, your character was instantly destroyed, rendering your armor class and health pool irrelevant. This diagram shows how the dungeon architecture replaced traditional monsters as the primary villain. Players were used to a cycle of attacking and defeating enemies, but the Tomb punished that exact routine. Rushing down a hallway or aggressively opening a treasure chest no longer yielded loot. It triggered immediate annihilation. The design used metagaming traps that exploited the predictable habits of experienced players. For example, the map features unmarked teleportation arches that act as one-way tripwires, stripping characters of their equipment and dumping them back outside the entrance, naked and vulnerable. Acererak, the undead wizard who built the Tomb, also deployed intense psychological manipulation. He constructed multiple false crypts inside the labyrinth, complete with decoy bosses and actual treasure. The goal was to trick an exhausted party into believing they had won, encouraging them to leave the real tomb undisturbed. Surviving this space meant treating every paving stone and keyhole as an active explosive. The environment demanded the methodical pacing of a bomb defusal unit, where one impulsive action resulted in permanent failure. Gygax first debuted this dungeon at the 1975 Origins game convention. Running a tournament with multiple dungeon masters leading massive 15-person groups created a logistical problem. If a player died instantly to a trap, they needed to know the outcome was based on their own choices, not a vague verbal description. To standardize the experience, Gygax introduced objective visual evidence. He commissioned a 20-page booklet containing 32 illustrations, like this demonic mosaic with a pitch-black mouth. Instead of listening to a game master describe a room, players were handed the physical picture. This physical component shifted the responsibility of perception directly onto the players. They had to scrutinize the artwork themselves to find hidden keyholes or discolored floor tiles that the verbal description might have glossed over. The strategy required to navigate these threats was deeply cynical. During the original playtests, veteran player Rob Kuntz brought a high-level warlord and a retinue of 14 orc henchmen. He systematically ordered his orcs to walk ahead of him, using them as literal cannon fodder to trigger the instant death traps, while his main character remained safely behind. The combination of the illustration book and Kuntz's pragmatism highlights the dungeon's true target. By providing objective visual evidence, The module ensured that character death wasn't a failure of the rules, but a failure of the person holding the sheet to see what was right in front of them. When the module was published commercially in 1978, it proved there was a massive market for this level of difficulty. It validated the idea that players wanted to test their actual wits against an aggressively hostile environment, establishing the killer dungeon as a staple of the hobby. Modern game design has moved away from this level of hostility. Most current systems are built to support heroic fantasy, focusing on character resilience and reliable mechanics for recovering lost resources. This creates a divide in how we view the game's history. If a high-level wizard dies because the person playing them forgot to tap the floor with a 10-foot pole, some see it as a failure of role-playing. Others see it as the purest form of tabletop interactivity, a game where the character's power cannot save a careless player. Recent versions of the tomb often add mathematical saving throws to these traps. Giving a character a reflex check to dodge a collapsing floor softens the ruthless identity that defined Gygax's original vision. The module remains a central point of study, precisely because it was unfair to the character. By removing the safety nets of hit points and armor class, Gygax forced players to abandon the fiction of the invincible hero and confront their own tactical errors in real time.